The lawyer's voice droned through the inheritance clause, and Diana Oakley watched her mother's mouth twist with satisfaction as he reached the disinheritance amendment. Given Diana Marie Oakley's persistent relationship with an individual deemed unsuitable and dangerous to family interests, the lawyer read, his discomfort visible in the perspiration beading his forehead, the estate trustees have unanimously agreed to remove her entirely from succession. All assets, properties, and trust allocations previously designated to Diana will be redistributed among remaining family members. Her father wouldn't even look at her. Her brother Marcus smirked from his leather chair, already calculating what portion of her share would land in his portfolio. Her mother simply stared, waiting for tears that wouldn't come. "Miss Oakley, if you'll sign here." The lawyer slid the papers across the glossed mahogany table. Diana took the pen. Her hand didn't shake. The Oakley fortune stretched back 6 generations, steel and shipping money that had survived economic collapses and world wars. She was signing away estates in 3 countries, investment portfolios worth hundreds of millions, the penthouse overlooking Central Park where she'd grown up. For him. She signed her name in steady script. "Diana, don't be dramatic." Her mother's voice cut like crystal shattering. "End this ridiculous affair and we can tear those papers up. We're giving you one final chance to come to your senses." Diana stood, smoothing her simple black dress. Nothing designer today. Nothing they'd bought her. "I am completely sensible, Mother. Perhaps for the first time in my life." "You're throwing away your future for a monster!" Marcus exploded from his chair. "He's not even human, Diana. He's a blood-sucking—" "Careful!" The word came from the doorway, low and pleasant and utterly silencing. "I'd hate for our first real meeting to end poorly." Korian Whitmore leaned against the doorframe with the casual grace of someone who'd been alive long enough to find intimidation boring. White hair fell past his shoulders, caught back with a silver clasp. His skin held that porcelain pallor that marked his kind, luminous and ageless. He wore a perfectly cut suit in charcoal gray, modern but with an old-world elegance in its lines. And he was smiling. He was always smiling, that playful curve of mouth that made him seem younger than his centuries, less dangerous than he was. "You," her mother breathed, rising to her feet. "You have no business here." "I have every business where Diana is concerned." Korian straightened, and something in the movement suggested coiled power despite his easy demeanor. "I came to walk her home, though I confess I arrived early and couldn't resist listening at the door. Terribly rude of me." He crossed the room in a few fluid strides, stopping beside Diana's chair. His hand found hers, cool fingers threading through warm ones. "You actually came," Diana murmured. "Did you doubt?" His thumb traced across her knuckles. "You're mine to protect, darling, even from well-appointed lawyers and expensive family cruelty." "She was ours first," her father said, finally speaking. His voice carried the weight of old money and older prejudice. "We raised her, educated her, gave her every advantage, and you've corrupted her in less than a year." "Corrupted?" Korian tasted the word, still smiling. Is that what loving someone is called in human circles these days? How times change. "You know exactly what you are." Marcus stepped forward, and Diana saw her brother's hand tremble slightly despite his aggression. "Good. He should be afraid." "You're a predator. You've seduced my sister for whatever sick game vampires play." "Actually, she seduced me." Korian's smile widened, showing just a hint of fang. "In a marketplace, of all places, 6 months ago. Would you like to hear the story? It's quite charming." Diana felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Korian." "No, really, they should know." He turned that smile on her, and it gentled into something genuine. "I was buying blood oranges from a vendor, yes. I appreciate the irony when 3 men decided to rob him. Just broad daylight thuggery. Your daughter stepped in before I could, shouting them down in 3 languages, one of which was quite creative gutter Italian. Then she bought the man's entire stock at twice his asking price and told him to go home early." "Diana doesn't speak Italian," her mother said faintly. She learned it to read Dante in the original. Did you know that? Or that she volunteers at the night shelter on 5th Street, or that she can identify any star in the northern sky? Korian's tone remained light, but something sharp lived underneath. You had a remarkable daughter under your roof for 24 years and never bothered to know her. The silence stretched painful and taut. The papers are signed, the lawyer said, desperate to end the scene. The disinheritance is legal and binding. Miss Oakley is no longer entitled to any portion of the estate. Wonderful. Korian tucked Diana's hand into the crook of his elbow. Then we can leave. Diana, darling, are you quite finished here? She looked at her family one last time. Her mother's face was rigid with fury and something that might have been fear. Her father had already turned away, as if she'd ceased to exist the moment the ink dried. Marcus just looked confused, like he couldn't understand how she wasn't begging to stay. Yes, Diana said clearly. I am completely finished. They walked out together, Korian's hand steady over hers. The law office occupied the 15th floor of a building that used to feel important. Now it just felt small. The elevator doors closed on her old life. You're very quiet, Korian observed as they descended. I'd expected more reaction, tears perhaps, or theatrical anger. You're usually so delightfully expressive. I don't feel angry. Diana watched the floor numbers tick down. I feel free. His fingers tightened on hers. Free enough to follow me into something considerably more complicated than simply walking away. She looked up at him. Even after 6 months, the beauty of his kind still startled her. Like a painting had stepped out of its frame, too perfect to be entirely real. But his eyes, pale gray, almost silver, held real warmth when he looked at her. Where are we going? She asked. To show you what you've gained for what you've lost. The elevator opened onto the marble lobby, and Korian led her toward the street. Your family thought cutting you off would break you. They don't understand that you've just traded a gilded cage for something considerably more interesting. A car waited at the curb, sleek and black. The driver wore livery in deep crimson, and when he opened the door, he bowed to Diana with the kind of respect she'd never received from her family's staff. My lady, he murmured. Diana slid into the leather interior, and Korian followed, settling beside her with that preternatural grace. The door closed, sealing them in dim, cool privacy. Your people know about me, she said. Of course, I am not in the habit of keeping secrets from my court. Korian stretched his legs out, looking remarkably relaxed for someone discussing vampire politics. They're divided on the question of you, I'll admit. Some think I'm besotted beyond reason. Others worry about the complications. A few support the match enthusiastically. And what do you think? He turned his head, and his smile shifted into something softer, more vulnerable. I think I watched you face down 3 armed thugs for a stranger's sake, and knew I'd never meet anyone like you again. I think you defended me at a dinner party where someone called vampires walking corpses with delusions of grandeur. And I think you did it before we'd even kissed. I think you signed away a fortune without hesitation because you've chosen me over everything safe and known. His hand came up to cup her cheek, cool palm against warm skin. I think I fell in love with you in that marketplace, Diana Oakley, and I've been trying to catch up to the feeling ever since. Her breath caught. They'd said the words before, but never like this. Never with such raw honesty beneath the playful surface he usually showed the world. So what happens now? She whispered. Now? Korian leaned close, his breath ghosting across her lips. Now I give you a kingdom to replace the one you lost. Would you like that, darling? Would you like to be a queen? He kissed her before she could answer, and the world narrowed to the cool press of his mouth, the careful way he touched her, always aware of his strength, always gentle. Diana sank into it, into him, letting everything else fall away. When they broke apart, the car was moving through streets she didn't recognize, heading downtown toward the river. Where are we going? She asked again. Home, Korian said simply. My real home. Not the penthouse I keep for appearances, but the seat of my court, the principality of Noctis Vale. Diana had heard the name before, whispered in the conversations of the few vampires she'd met through Korian. An underground kingdom, literally carved into the bedrock beneath the city. A remnant of older times when vampire lords had ruled territories openly, now reduced to a shadow realm of tunnels and ancient halls. "You're taking me to meet your court," she said. "I'm taking you to see what you'll rule." Korian watched her carefully, his playfulness dimmed. "If you want it, if you can bear the weight of it. You've never talked about ruling before. Because I wasn't sure you'd stay. Most humans run screaming when they understand what our world truly entails." His hand found hers again, lacing their fingers together. "But you signed those papers without flinching, Diana. You chose this path. So I'm showing you where it leads." The car descended into an underground garage, but not one Diana recognized. The ramp kept spiraling down, level after level, until they were impossibly deep. The walls changed from concrete to stone, from stone to something older. Massive blocks fitted together without mortar. They stopped in a vast chamber lit by electric lights wired through ancient brackets. A handful of other vehicles were parked in the shadows, and figures moved in the dimness, pale-skinned, white-haired, inhumanly graceful. Vampires. More vampires than Diana had ever seen in one place. They bowed as Korian emerged from the car, deep, respectful bows that recognized authority. "My lord," one said, a woman in a dark dress that looked Victorian in cut. "We didn't expect you until evening." Plans changed, Narcissa. Korian helped Diana from the car, keeping her close. "Is the council assembled?" "They're gathering now." Word spreads quickly. Narcissa's gaze flicked to Diana, curious and assessing. "My lady." The title made Diana's stomach flutter. "Hello." They walked through corridors carved from living rock, ancient beyond reckoning. The architecture shifted as they progressed, Roman arches giving way to Gothic vaulting, medieval stonework intersecting with Renaissance elegance. Centuries of construction layered atop each other, a hidden history beneath the city streets. Vampires watched from doorways and balconies. Diana felt the weight of their attention, heard the whispers that followed in their wake. "The human girl. He's actually bringing her here. The king has lost his mind." Korian's hand tightened on hers, but he kept walking, kept smiling, unbothered by the gossip. They entered a hall that stole Diana's breath. The ceiling soared 40 feet high, held up by columns carved with intricate reliefs. Stained glass windows in rich jewel tones glowed with artificial light behind them, creating the illusion of sunlight without the danger. Tapestries centuries old hung on the walls, depicting battles and coronations and scenes from myths Diana only half recognized. A throne sat on a raised dais at the far end. Just one throne, carved from black marble and silver, austere and beautiful. Around it stood a group of vampires, clearly the court Korian had mentioned. They wore modern clothes but carried themselves with the formality of a much older time. As Korian and Diana approached, they bowed, some deeply, some with barely concealed reluctance. "My lords and ladies," Korian said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber, "I present Diana Oakley, the woman I intend to make my consort and co-ruler of Noctis Vale." The silence was absolute. Then a man stepped forward, elderly by vampire standards, his white hair falling past his shoulders, his face lined with age that spoke of millennia rather than centuries. "My lord, we agreed you would consult the council before making such a declaration." "Did we?" Korian's smile never wavered. "I must have forgotten. How terribly rude of me." "This is not a jest," the old vampire said sharply. "You propose to elevate a mortal to rule over our kind. The implications are mine to manage, Severin. As king of this principality, the choice of consort falls to me alone. Or has that law changed in the last 5 minutes?" "The law stands." A woman spoke this time, younger in appearance, with the same white hair bound in an elaborate braid. "But custom dictates that the king's choice should benefit the realm. What does a human bring to Noctis Vale except mortality and weakness?" Diana felt the words like a slap, but Korian's hand on hers remained steady. "She brings perspective we've lost," he said quietly. She brings adaptability, compassion, and a mind not trapped in the patterns of immortal thinking. She brings change, which we desperately need. Change. Severin made it sound like a curse. We have survived for 3,000 years by maintaining tradition, my lord. Change is what destroys kingdoms. Stagnation destroys kingdoms, Korian countered. Look around you, Severin. Our population dwindles, our territory shrinks. The mortal world evolves and we hide in deeper shadows, clinging to old glories. When I inherited this crown 200 years ago, we numbered 3,000. Now we barely reach 800. If that isn't dying, what is? The words hung heavy in the ancient hall. Diana looked at the vampires surrounding them and saw the truth reflected in their faces. This wasn't a thriving court. It was a remnant, a fading echo of something that once was. "And you believe a human can solve this?" the woman asked, but her tone had shifted, less hostile now. "I believe someone who understands both worlds might see solutions we've missed." Korian turned to Diana, and his smile gentled. "Darling, these are the lords and ladies of my council. Severin, who has served Noctis Vale since its founding. Lady Alessia, who commands our blood sources. Lord Draven, who maintains our security. And 6 others whose advice I value greatly, even when I ignore it, spectacularly." A few of the council members looked like they were suppressing amusement at that. "My lords, my ladies," Diana said, forcing her voice steady. "I don't pretend to have answers yet. I don't know your customs or your laws, but I do know that Korian is remarkable, and that if he believes in your survival, then so do I. If you'll give me a chance to prove myself, I'll work every day to earn your trust." It was a politician's answer, the kind she'd learned at her mother's dinner parties, but it was also truth, and she thought they could hear the difference. Severin studied her for a long moment, his ancient eyes unreadable. Then he bowed, slightly deeper than before. "You speak well, Lady Diana. Welcome to Noctis Vale. We will watch with great interest to see what you make of your new station." It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't outright rejection either. Diana would take it. The council began to disperse, their audience with the king apparently concluded. Alessia lingered, approaching with her hands clasped before her. "May I speak plainly, my lord?" she asked. "You always do," Korian said. "The blood covenant with the Chicago Syndicate expires in 6 weeks. They're demanding new terms, more territory access, higher payments, and exclusivity on all our trade with mortal suppliers." Alessia's expression was grim. "If we agree, we'll be financially dependent on them within a year. If we refuse, we lose our primary blood source." "What do we currently pay them?" Diana asked before she could stop herself. Alessia blinked, surprised at being addressed directly. 50,000 a month, my lady, for access to their blood bank network. It's expensive, but the alternative is hunting, and we agreed centuries ago to abandon that practice." 50,000 for how much blood? Approximately 600 units monthly. It's barely sufficient for our population. Diana did the math quickly. That's over $80 per unit. The Red Cross sells blood to hospitals for around $200 per unit retail, but production cost is closer to $50 when you account for donation drives, testing, and storage. You're already paying above cost. The room had gone very quiet. Even Korian was staring at her. "How do you know this?" Alessia asked. "I volunteer at a blood bank. I've seen the budgets." Diana looked between them. "Your syndicate is price gouging because they know you're desperate. Why are you dependent on a single source?" "Because blood acquisition is delicate," Alessia said carefully. "We can't simply walk into a hospital and purchase it. Questions would be asked. The masquerade would be threatened." "But you could if you had a legitimate buyer. A medical research company, a pharmaceutical firm, someone with legal standing to purchase large quantities." Diana's mind was racing now, putting together pieces. "You need a human front." Korian's smile had returned, slow and genuine. "See," he said to his council. "Perspective." "It's not that simple," Draven said, speaking for the first time. He was younger looking than Severin, with a warrior's bearing. "We've tried such fronts before. Mortal authorities investigate, discover irregularities, shut us down. The risk is considerable. Then you need someone with legitimate credentials and connections. Diana turned to Korian. Give me 2 weeks. Let me research this properly. Find the right approach. If I can't produce a viable solution, I'll step back from this whole co-ruling idea. Deal? He studied her, and something like pride shone in his eyes. You're gambling your future on solving our blood crisis? I'm proving I'm not just a pretty human you're besotted with. She kept her voice light but meant every word. You said I bring something to this kingdom. Let me show you. Korian looked at his council. My lords, my ladies. Shall we give her the chance? The Chicago Syndicate won't wait 2 weeks, Alessia warned. Then tell them we're considering their terms. Stall them. Korian's hand found Diana's again, and he raised it to his lips in an old-fashioned gesture that sent whispers through the watching vampires. My consort wishes to prove herself. We will give her the opportunity. The council dispersed with various degrees of skepticism and interest. When they were finally alone in the great hall, Diana let out a breath she'd been holding. That was either very brave or spectacularly stupid, she said. Both, I think. Korian drew her close, his arms circling her waist. You realize you've just promised to solve a problem that's plagued my realm for decades? No pressure, then. He laughed, the sound echoing through the ancient hall. You're magnificent. Have I told you that recently? Not in the last hour. A terrible oversight. He kissed her forehead, her cheek, the corner of her mouth. You're magnificent, Diana Oakley, brilliant and brave and utterly impossible to intimidate. Your council hates me. Half of them hate me too. It's fine. He was teasing now, his usual playfulness returning. They'll come around once you've saved us all from blood supply collapse. No pressure. Diana groaned and buried her face against his chest. He was cool through the silk of his shirt, solid and steady. What have I gotten myself into? A kingdom, darling, exactly as I promised. His hand stroked through her hair. Come, let me show you the rest of your inheritance. He led her through the principality, and Diana began to understand the scope of what she'd stepped into. Noctis Vale wasn't just a court. It was a city, carved into multiple levels beneath the streets above. Residential quarters where vampires lived in apartments that ranged from spare modern to opulent historical. Markets where they traded goods and blood and favors. Libraries that held books in languages Diana had never seen. Gardens lit by artificial sunlight where they grew flowers that bloomed only at night in the world above. And everywhere, vampires, young and old in appearance, though all of them were ancient by mortal standards. They stared as Korian walked past with Diana on his arm, some with hostility, some with curiosity, many with the wary hopefulness of people who'd been promised salvation too many times before. They're afraid, Diana said quietly as they walked through a residential quarter. Of you. Of disappointment. Of things changing and getting worse instead of better. She watched a child vampire or something that looked like a child, frozen in youth for eternity, peer at her from a doorway. How long has it been since things were good here? Korian was quiet for a moment. I inherited Noctis Vale from my uncle during the Industrial Revolution. He'd let it decline for centuries before that, lost in his own paranoia and cruelty. I've spent 200 years trying to rebuild what he destroyed. It's slow work. Why do you stay? Diana asked. If it's failing anyway, why not just leave? Join a larger court, go somewhere thriving. He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. His playfulness had drained away, leaving something raw and honest underneath. Because they're mine, he said simply. Every vampire in this principality is my responsibility. I'm their king. I don't abandon my people because the work is hard. There it was. The truth beneath the charm and the easy smiles. Korian was old enough, powerful enough, wealthy enough to live anywhere, do anything. Instead, he'd chosen to pour centuries into saving a dying kingdom that no one else wanted. Diana reached up to cup his face, her warm hands framing that porcelain pale skin. Then we'll save it together. His eyes closed, and for a moment he just leaned into her touch, letting himself be vulnerable. I've been doing this alone for so long, he whispered. I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand beside me. You're not alone anymore. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, and Diana felt the weight of 200 years of loneliness in it. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Come, Korian said, his voice rough. There's one more place you need to see. He led her to an upper level, closer to the surface. The chambers here were clearly royal apartments, spacious and beautifully appointed. But it was the office he showed her that made Diana pause. One wall was covered in maps, modern city layouts overlaid with historical ones, showing how the principality had once extended throughout the region and now huddled beneath a few square miles. Another wall held charts and graphs, population numbers declining in steady, inexorable lines. A third was covered in photographs of vampires, faces young and old, and Diana realized with a chill that they were the dead, the ones who hadn't survived. This was where Korian fought his war against extinction, not with weapons, but with paperwork and planning and the grinding, unglamorous work of keeping people alive. You let them think you're just a charming dilettante, Diana said slowly, the playful king who doesn't take anything seriously. It's easier that way. Korian leaned against the desk, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked tired. They don't need to know how close we are to collapse. They don't need to carry that fear. Let them think I have everything under control, that I'm just eccentric in how I handle crises. But you are terrified. Constantly. He said it without shame. I'm afraid I'll be the king who presides over the end of Noctis Vale, that every decision I make will be wrong, that I'll wake up one night and discover we've finally crossed the line from declining to dead. Diana crossed to him, stepping between his legs as he leaned against the desk. Her hands found his shoulders, feeling the tension in them. That's why you fell in love with me, she said, understanding clicking into place. Not just because I defended a stranger, because you saw someone who cares about people the way you do. You saw a vulnerable mortal being threatened and didn't hesitate. Didn't calculate the risk or worry about your safety. You just acted because it was right. Korian's hands settled on her hips, holding her gently. I've lived 800 years, Diana. I've met countless humans and vampires. Most people are decent when it's convenient. You're decent when it's hard. So are you, she said fiercely. You could have walked away from all this, lived in luxury and let Noctis Vale crumble. Instead, you stay and fight and bleed yourself dry trying to save people who half the time don't appreciate it. We make quite a pair, don't we? His smile returned, fragile but real. Two stubborn idealists throwing themselves at impossible problems. Sounds perfect to me. He pulled her into a kiss that was gentler than before, less desperate, more intimate. Diana sank into it, her fingers threading through his white hair, marveling at how something so cool could feel so warm. When they finally broke apart, Diana turned to study the office properly. Can I work here? It's yours if you want it. Then I want it. Computer access to mortal databases? Carefully routed through multiple secure proxies, but yes. Files on the Chicago Syndicate? Everything we have. Diana rolled up her sleeves. Then let's get started. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of research and planning. Diana barely slept, dividing her time between the mortal world above and the vampire realm below. She called in favors from her volunteer work, contacted medical supply companies, researched pharmaceutical regulations until her eyes burned. Korian stayed by her side through it all, answering questions about vampire politics and blood consumption rates, running interference with the council when they grew impatient. At night, when Diana finally collapsed from exhaustion, he'd carry her to his chambers and hold her while she slept, cool arms wrapped protectively around her. She woke once to find him watching her, his expression soft and wondering. What? She mumbled, still half asleep. You snore very gently, he said, smiling. It's adorable. Vampires don't snore. Vampires don't breathe. He traced a finger down her nose. I find I miss the sound when you're not here. Diana burrowed closer, pressing her face against his chest. Stay with me. Always, darling. She fell back asleep to the sound of his voice, humming something old and wordless, and felt safer than she ever had in her family's penthouse. On the 13th day, Diana called a meeting with Korian's council. They assembled in the Great Hall again, all 9 counselors plus a handful of other important vampires. Diana stood beside Korian's throne. He'd insisted she take the throne itself, but that felt like tempting fate with a laptop borrowed from the principality's modest technology reserves. "My lords and ladies," she began, keeping her voice steady despite her nerves. "I've spent the last 2 weeks analyzing your blood supply problem. The issue isn't acquisition, it's legitimacy and cost structure. You're paying criminal intermediaries to provide something you could obtain legally with the right framework." She pulled up her presentation on a screen Draven had rigged. "I propose we establish a medical research nonprofit organization publicly focused on rare blood disorders. Such organizations have legal standing to purchase blood from established suppliers, but they operate under less scrutiny than for-profit companies. Donations are tax-deductible, which makes funding easier to explain." "We've tried nonprofits before," Severin said. "They attract attention. Because you've run them like fronts. All shell, no substance." Diana advanced to the next slide. "This one will be real. We'll actually conduct research, publish papers, do everything a legitimate organization does. That requires staff, both vampire and human, who understand the double purpose. And it requires me." "You?" Alessia leaned forward, interested despite herself. "I'll be the public face. Diana Oakley, recently disinherited by a wealthy family, starting a charity to prove herself. It's a plausible story, sympathetic even. I have enough connections left in the mortal world to make it credible." Diana pulled up budget projections. "Initial costs are high, about 300,000 to establish properly, but long-term will cut your blood expenses by 60% and eliminate the syndicate's leverage completely." The council exchanged glances. Draven spoke first. 300,000. We don't have that kind of liquid capital." "Yes, you do." Diana had anticipated this. "You have assets you're not using. Property in the mortal world registered to shell companies, art collections sitting in storage, investments frozen because you don't have human agents to manage them properly. I've gone through your financial records." "You did what?" Severin looked alarmed. "Korian gave me access." Diana glanced at the king, who was trying very hard not to look smug. "You're asset-rich but cash-poor because you've been thinking like immortals in a mortal economy. You're sitting on things waiting for them to appreciate over centuries while you starve. Liquidate strategically, invest in infrastructure that serves you now, and you'll stabilize your financial position." She could see them starting to believe, starting to hope. "The Chicago Syndicate won't give up their income stream without a fight," Lady Alessia said quietly. "They'll interfere, possibly violently." "Let them try." Korian spoke for the first time, and his voice carried absolute confidence. "They operate in my city by my tolerance. If they move against Diana or her organization, they'll discover why I'm called king." The temperature in the hall seemed to drop. Diana glanced at Korian and saw something ancient looking out from those pale eyes, something that reminded her he was a predator and a sovereign, not just the charming man who made her laugh. The council saw it too. Severin bowed his head. "If you believe in this plan, my lord, the council will support it." "I believe in her," Korian said simply, and the weight of his certainty filled the hall. The vote was unanimous. Diana spent the next month building the foundation, literally and figuratively. She rented office space in the city, hired staff a mix of humans who thought they were working for a regular nonprofit, and vampires who knew the truth. She filed paperwork, applied for grants, and gave interviews to local press about her new mission after being cut off from her family. The story proved even more sympathetic than she'd predicted. Society pages that had chronicled the Oakley family for generations now ran pieces about Diana Oakley's charitable pivot. Donations trickled in from people who admired her apparent determination to prove herself. Her family saw the articles. Her mother called once, voice tight with fury, demanding to know what Diana thought she was accomplishing. Diana had hung up without answering. She didn't need their approval anymore. The Chicago Syndicate, as predicted, made their displeasure known. First came warnings, subtle suggestions that Diana's nonprofit might face unexpected complications. Then came escalation break-ins at the office, threatening messages, an attempted mugging that might have succeeded if Draven hadn't been shadowing her. Korian's response was swift and absolute. He called a gathering of every vampire power in the region, from the Chicago Syndicate to the New York Covens to the independent lords who answered to no one. It was held in neutral territory, an abandoned church that still held enough sacred weight to keep violence at bay. Diana attended on his arm, the only human in a room full of vampires. "Gentlemen, ladies," Korian said, addressing the assembly with that easy smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let me be very clear. Diana Oakley is mine. She is my consort, my chosen partner, and the co-ruler of Noctis Vale. Any threat to her is a threat to me personally. Any action taken against her or her work will be considered an act of war against my principality." The Chicago Syndicate's representative, a vampire named Lucian who wore his age in the cold calculation of his eyes, stepped forward. "We have existing contracts with Noctis Vale. Her little charity threatens our business interests." "Your extortion racket, you mean?" Korian's smile sharpened. "You've been bleeding my principality for decades. That ends now. Diana offers you a choice. Work with her organization as a legitimate supplier at fair market rates, or lose our business entirely." "You need us," Lucian said flatly. "Without our network. Without your network, we'll build our own. Diana has already secured preliminary agreements with 3 blood banks and 2 hospitals. We don't need you, Lucian. We're offering you the chance to profit honestly, instead of through coercion. Take it or leave it." The room had gone deadly silent. Every vampire present understood what was happening. Korian was drawing a line, backing his human consort against one of the most powerful vampire organizations in the region. It was either incredibly brave or political suicide. Lucien studied Diana with cold interest. "She must be extraordinary in bed for you to risk your kingdom over her." Korian moved. One moment he was beside Diana, the next he had Lucian by the throat, lifted off the ground, slammed against the church wall hard enough to crack stone. The playful mask was gone entirely, leaving only the predator, the king, the creature who'd survived 8 centuries through strength and will. "Speak of her that way again," Korian said softly, "and I'll paint these walls with what's left of you. Are we clear?" Lucian's eyes had gone wide. Around them, vampires shifted nervously. Diana saw hands moving toward weapons, allegiances forming in real time. "Korian," she said quietly, "let him go." He didn't move. "Please, let him go." Slowly, Korian released his grip. Lucian dropped to the floor, gasping unnecessarily. Vampires didn't need to breathe, but old habits die hard. Korian stepped back, his hand finding Diana's, and she felt the tension thrumming through him. "I apologize for my colleague's rudeness," said another vampire from the Chicago delegation, this one female and considerably more diplomatic. "We have no wish for war with Noctis Vale. If Lady Diana's organization can offer fair rates and reliable supply, we're willing to negotiate." "Then we'll negotiate," Diana said, finding her voice. "Thank you." The gathering dispersed slowly, warily. Korian led Diana out into the night, and she could feel him shaking with suppressed violence. "You shouldn't have stopped me," he said once they were alone. "You were going to kill him in front of everyone." "Yes? And start a war." "Possibly." He turned to her, and his eyes were still that inhuman silver. "He insulted you, Diana. Reduced you to a bed warmer in front of assembled powers. I won't tolerate that." "I know." She stepped close, taking his face in her hands. "I know you want to protect me, but I need to fight some battles myself, or your council will never respect me. They'll just see me as your weakness." "You're my strength," he said fiercely. "Don't you understand that? Before you, I was going through motions, managing decline. You make me believe we can actually win. Then let me prove I'm strong enough to stand beside you." Diana kissed him, pouring reassurance into it. "I'm not fragile, Korian. I signed away a fortune without blinking. I faced down your council. I can handle vampire politics. You shouldn't have to. Neither should you. But here we are." She rested her forehead against his. We're in this together, remember? For better or worse, kingdom and consort. He wrapped his arms around her, holding tight. I'm not used to sharing the burden. Get used to it. You're stuck with me now. His laugh was shaky but genuine. Best thing that ever happened to me, getting stuck with you. They stood there in the darkness outside the church, vampire king and human woman, while the city hummed around them. Diana felt the cool press of him, the steady presence that had become her anchor, and knew she'd made the right choice. The Oakley fortune suddenly seemed very small compared to this. The nonprofit launched officially 6 weeks after Diana had made her proposal. The opening gala was held in a renovated warehouse in the Arts District, deliberately not ostentatious, but elegant enough to attract donors. Diana gave a speech about blood disorders and medical research that was 70% true and 30% careful misdirection. Checks were written, connections were made, and in the back of the room, Korian watched with undisguised pride. "Your girl cleans up well," Alessia murmured, standing beside him in the shadows. She wore modern dress for the occasion, passing as human easily. "She's magnificent," Korian agreed. "The council is impressed. Even Severin admits you chose well." "I'll try not to let that go to my head." Alessia smiled, the expression rare and genuine. "We have a chance now, my lord. A real chance at survival. The blood supply will stabilize within 3 months according to her projections. That gives us breathing room to address the population decline, the territorial issues, everything else." "I know." Korian couldn't take his eyes off Diana as she charmed a wealthy donor with the same warmth she'd shown that market vendor months ago. "She's going to save us all." "She's mortal," Alessia said quietly. "Have you thought about what that means? She'll age, Korian. In 50 years she'll be elderly. In 70, gone. Can you bear that?" "I'll bear it for as long as I have her." He'd thought about little else, honestly. The cruel mathematics of loving a human when you were immortal. And when the time comes, if she wants the turning, I'll give her eternity. But that's her choice to make. And if she doesn't want it, then I'll love her until her last breath and count myself blessed for however long we have. Korian glanced at his counselor. "Immortality without her would just be an endless string of empty years, Alessia. I'd rather have 50 mortal years of joy than eternity of solitude." Alessia studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You really do love her." "With everything I am." The gala continued late into the night. Diana worked the room with the skill of someone raised in society, but with genuine warmth her mother had never managed. People responded to her, wanted to help her, believed in her mission. When it finally ended and they returned to Noctis Vale, Diana kicked off her heels with a groan and collapsed onto the couch in Korian's chambers. "I hate fundraising," she announced. "You were brilliant at it." Korian settled beside her, pulling her feet into his lap to massage them. His cool hands felt wonderful against her aching soles. "I was performing. There's a difference." She closed her eyes, letting exhaustion wash over her. "How much did we raise?" $250,000, according to the last count. Enough to fully fund year 1 operations and leave a cushion. "Good. That's good." Diana cracked one eye open. "Your council is watching me differently now, less hostile. You've proven yourself. They see you as an asset now, not just my indulgence." "Is that what I was before? Your indulgence?" Korian's hands stilled on her feet. "You were my salvation. There's a difference." She sat up, reading the seriousness in his expression. "Korian, I need to tell you something." He took her hands, holding them carefully. "The blood crisis is bad, Diana, but it's not the worst thing facing Noctis Vale. I've been dying for 200 years trying to fix things. But the real problem is simpler and more terrible. We're infertile." Diana blinked. "What?" "Vampire fertility drops as we age. The oldest among us haven't produced offspring in millennia. Even the younger ones struggle. We have maybe 3 births a decade in a population of 800. At that rate, we go extinct regardless of blood supply." His grip tightened. "That's the real crisis. That's what I haven't been able to solve. But why? What causes it? We don't know. Theories range from biological to mystical. Perhaps it's nature's check on immortal predators. Perhaps we're meant to fade. He looked away, and Diana saw centuries of grief in the line of his jaw. I can save us from starvation. I can protect our territory and maintain our masquerade. But I can't give my people children. I can't give them a future. Diana's mind raced. Have you tried working with human fertility specialists? Vampires can't exactly schedule appointments at mortal clinics. No, but I can. She was already thinking through possibilities. If we frame it as research for the nonprofit, study rare blood disorders that affect reproduction, we could gather data, run tests, find someone who specializes in this. Diana, vampirism isn't just a blood disorder. Our entire biology is different. But blood is part of it, right? You need it to survive, to maintain strength. Maybe there's a nutritional component, or maybe exposure to human blood over centuries has affected your reproductive systems. We won't know until we investigate properly. She cupped his face, making him look at her. You're not giving up, are you? I've been fighting this for 2 centuries. Then fight for 2 more. But this time, you're not alone. Something cracked in his expression, and he pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. How do you have this much hope? He whispered. How are you not terrified of all this? I am terrified, Diana admitted. I'm terrified of failing you, of failing your people, of not being enough. She pulled back to meet his eyes. But I'm more afraid of not trying. You asked me once if I wanted to be a queen. The answer is yes. Not because I want power or a kingdom, but because I want you. And I want the chance to build something that matters. You matter, he said fiercely, more than any kingdom. Then let me matter by helping. She kissed him softly. We're partners, Korian. Your problems are my problems now. Your people are my people. So let me help carry the weight. He kissed her back, and it turned into something deeper, more desperate. They made love on the couch in his chambers, vampire and human, immortal and mortal, king and consort. Diana felt the cool press of his body over hers, the careful way he touched her, always aware of his strength. She mapped the lines of him with her hands, memorizing the feel of skin like marble, hair like silk, the way he said her name like a prayer. Afterward, they lay tangled together, his hand tracing idle patterns on her back. I want to turn you, he said quietly. Eventually, when you're ready, I want to give you immortality so we don't have to count the years. Diana's breath caught. They danced around the subject before, but never addressed it directly. And if I'm not ready, if I never am, then I love you exactly as you are, for exactly as long as we have. His hand stilled. I won't pressure you, Diana. The turning is a gift and a curse both. You should choose it freely or not at all. What does it involve? She'd never asked before, afraid of the answer. 3 exchanges of blood over 3 nights. The 3rd drink kills you, stops your heart, stills your lungs. Then you wake as something new, stronger, faster, immortal, but also bound to darkness, dependent on blood, cut off from sunlight forever. He was quiet for a moment. You'd lose your warmth, your heartbeat, the ability to have children if you wanted them. Diana absorbed that. Would I still be me? In every way that matters. You'd keep your memories, your personality, your soul if you believe in such things. You'd just be more and less, depending on how you look at it. She turned to face him, studying those pale features in the dim light. I don't know if I want it, she admitted. But I don't not want it either. Can I have time to decide? All the time you need. He kissed her forehead. I've lived 800 years. I can be patient. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Diana dreamed of kingdoms and blood and choices that would define centuries. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Diana's nonprofit grew faster than projected, attracting both funding and attention. They published their first research paper on rare blood disorders, establishing academic credibility. Behind the scenes, they funneled blood supplies to Noctis Vale at rates that made Alessia smile with actual pleasure. The Chicago syndicate, true to their word, became legitimate suppliers, their profit margins smaller, but their operations no longer criminal. Lucian himself never spoke to Diana again, but his more diplomatic colleague became a regular contact. Diana also quietly reached out to a fertility specialist she'd known from volunteer work, feeding her carefully edited information about a rare condition affecting a closed community. The doctor was intrigued enough to consult, and Diana began gathering data from the vampire population. "You're asking very personal questions," Severin informed her during one council meeting. "Many of our people are uncomfortable discussing such matters with a human." "Then I'll stop asking." Diana didn't back down from the old vampire's stare. "But I can't help solve a problem I don't understand. If they want children, they'll have to trust me with some discomfort. And if you can't solve it, then I'll have tried, which is more than anyone's done in centuries." Severin's expression softened slightly. "You sound like your king." "Good," Diana smiled. "He's taught me well." Spring turned to summer, and Diana's position in Noctis Vale solidified. The vampires who'd watched with skepticism now greeted her with respect. Those who'd been openly hostile had either warmed or at least stopped sneering. She had allies now. Alessia particularly had become a friend, teaching Diana the intricacies of vampire court politics. "You're doing better than Korian's last consort," Alessia mentioned one evening as they reviewed financial reports. Diana looked up sharply. He had a consort before? 300 years ago, a vampire named Seraphine, beautiful and utterly unsuited for leadership. She lasted 20 years before leaving him for a warlord in Eastern Europe. Alessia paused. "He doesn't talk about her. The betrayal wounded him deeply. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you should know what it means that he's risked it again. You should know how much courage it took for him to give you his heart after having it broken so thoroughly." Alessia met Diana's eyes. "Don't waste that gift, Diana." "I won't," Diana promised. She asked Korian about Seraphine that night. He went very still, then sighed. "Alessia has a big mouth." "She cares about you." "I know." He was quiet for a long moment. "Seraphine was a mistake. I loved her, or thought I did, but she wanted the crown without the responsibility. When I wouldn't abandon Noctis Vale to go play at conquest with her, she left, took several of my people with her. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me what love without partnership looks like." He turned to Diana, and his smile was soft. "You're nothing like her. You want to build, not just rule. You want to help, not just be admired. You're real in a way she never was." Diana kissed him, pouring reassurance into it. "I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." In August, disaster struck. A vampire child, one of the rare births Korian had mentioned, fell ill with something none of the healers could identify. She was 5 years old in appearance, actually 15, and she was dying. Diana stood in the healing chambers with Korian and watched the girl named Isabeau struggle to breathe. "What are her symptoms?" Diana asked. "Fever, weakness, blood rejection," the healer explained. "She can't process blood anymore. It's as if her body has forgotten how. Has this happened before?" "Twice in my lifetime," Korian said quietly. "Both children died." Diana looked at the small figure on the bed, white hair damp with sweat, skin nearly translucent. She looked so human like this, so vulnerable. "Let me make some calls." She spent the next 12 hours on the phone with every specialist she could reach, describing symptoms carefully, avoiding details that would reveal the truth. Finally, a hematologist in Boston suggested a possibility, an autoimmune response where the body attacked its own blood processing systems. "Can it be treated?" Diana asked. "In humans, sometimes. Immunosuppressants, careful transfusions, time." The doctor paused. "But this patient isn't human, is she?" Diana's heart stopped. "What makes you say that?" "Because the symptoms you're describing are impossible in humans. Our bodies don't work that way." The doctor's voice was kind, not accusatory. "I don't know what you're dealing with, Ms. Oakley, but I hope you save her." The line went dead. Diana stood in her office, shaking. She'd just exposed them. Exposed Korian, knocked his veil, everything. One careless phone call and the masquerade was... Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Diana Oakley. The voice was female, old and amused. You've been making very interesting calls. I think we should meet. Who is this? Someone who might be able to help your little patient, and who's very curious about a human woman running a non-profit that smells distinctly of vampire. Diana's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Meet me at the address I'm texting you. Come alone, and bring your vampire king if you're brave. The call ended. A moment later, a text arrived with an address in the warehouse district. Diana found Korian in the healing chambers, holding Isabeau's hand while her parents watched with haunted eyes. She pulled him aside and explained everything in a whisper. It's a trap, he said immediately. Probably. We're not going. We have to. If there's even a chance she can help Isabeau. Diana, this is how vampires disappear. Mysterious calls, isolated meetings. His hand cupped her cheek. I won't risk you. And I won't let that child die because we were too afraid to take a chance. Diana covered his hand with hers. We go together. We go armed. We go smart. But we go. He closed his eyes. You're going to be the death of me. You're already dead. Semantics. They told Draven where they were going and left instructions. If they weren't back in 2 hours, come in force. Then they drove to the warehouse district, armed and wary. The address led to an abandoned factory that looked like it had been closed since the 60s. But inside, someone had created a space that was equal parts laboratory and occult sanctum. Medical equipment sat alongside books in languages Diana couldn't read, and in the center of it all stood a vampire. She looked ancient. Not in appearance, she seemed maybe 30, but in the weight of her presence. White hair fell in a single braid down her back. She wore a lab coat over dark clothes, and her eyes were the palest blue Diana had ever seen. Korian Whitmore, she said, smiling. It's been a long time. Morella. Korian's voice was carefully neutral. I didn't know you were in the region. I go where the interesting problems are. And you, my dear king, have very interesting problems. Morella's gaze shifted to Diana. And you must be the human everyone's talking about. Diana Oakley, recently disinherited, currently saving a dying principality. How deliciously dramatic. Can you help Isabeau? Diana asked directly. Possibly. Depends on whether her father will consent to experimental treatment. Morella moved to a lab table covered in vials and equipment. The child is rejecting blood because her immune system has overreacted to a virus. Probably picked it up from a human she fed from. It happens occasionally. You can cure it? I can try. I've been studying vampire immunology for 6 centuries. It's what I do, wander around fixing problems other vampires create through their stubborn refusal to adapt. She looked at Korian pointedly. Like running a principality into the ground through noble self-sacrifice instead of asking for help. I'm asking now, Korian said quietly, because your human made you. Morella smiled, and it was almost fond. I like her. She has spine. Can you also help with the fertility problem? Diana asked. Both ancient vampires turned to stare at her. What fertility problem? Morella asked slowly. Diana explained what Korian had told her. As she spoke, Morella's expression shifted from curiosity to surprise to something like excitement. That's what's been happening, she breathed. I've noticed the decline, but I thought it was localized. You're saying it's widespread? Every principality I've had contact with reports the same thing, Korian confirmed. Show me your data, everything you have. Morella was already moving, clearing space on a table. This could be everything. This could be why, Diana, you're brilliant. Has anyone told you that? Frequently, Korian said dryly. Usually me. They spent the next 4 hours in that warehouse laboratory. Morella examined Diana's carefully collected data, asked 100 questions, ran calculations on equipment Diana didn't recognize. Finally, she sat back. It's the blood, she said. Modern human blood. It's making you infertile. Silence. Explain, Korian said. Humans have changed. Medications, hormones, environmental toxins, it's all in their blood now. Birth control, antidepressants, hormone therapies, agricultural chemicals. When vampires feed or drink donated blood, we're consuming all of that, and it's affecting our reproductive systems. Morella pulled up charts. Your fertility decline maps perfectly to the industrialization of human medicine. The more processed human blood becomes, the less vampires can conceive. Diana felt like she'd been punched. We did this. Humans did this to you. Unintentionally, Morella said. But yes. The solution, however, is complex. You'd need to source blood from humans who live completely clean, no medications, no processed foods, no chemical exposure. Essentially, pre-industrial blood. That's impossible in the modern world, Korian said. Not impossible. Difficult. Morella looked thoughtful. You'd need a controlled population. Volunteers willing to maintain strict diets and avoid all medications. Essentially blood donors who live like it's the 18th century. Who would agree to that? Diana asked. You'd be surprised. Humans crave purpose. Offer them meaningful work, good pay, and the knowledge they're helping preserve an endangered species. You'll find volunteers. Morella smiled. Especially if you have a charismatic human face for the program. Someone trusted. Someone who's already proven she can bridge both worlds. Diana looked at Korian. He was staring at Morella like she'd just handed him the sun. This could work, he said slowly. This could actually work. It will take years to implement properly, years to see results. Morella began packing up her equipment. But yes, it could work. I'll help. I've been bored anyway. Why? Diana asked. Why help us? Morella paused, and for a moment her ancient nature showed through. Because I'm tired of watching us fade. Because Korian is one of the good ones, stubborn and idealistic and worth saving. And because you, Diana Oakley, remind me of someone I used to be a very long time ago. She left contact information and promised to come to Noctis Vale within the week to treat Isabeau. Then she simply vanished into the night, leaving Diana and Korian staring at each other in the abandoned factory. Did that just happen? Diana asked. I think so. Korian pulled her close and she felt him shaking. Diana, if she's right, if we can actually fix this, then you'll have saved your people, given them a real future. We'll have saved them. He pulled back to look at her, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. You did this. You made the calls, gathered the data, asked the questions I'd stopped asking because I was too afraid of the answers. We're partners, Diana said firmly. Partners save each other. He kissed her then, deep and grateful, and full of a hope she'd never felt from him before. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. Morella kept her promise. Within a week, Isabeau was responding to treatment. Within 2, she was eating, drinking normally again. The principality celebrated like it was a holy day, and Diana found herself at the center of it, praised and thanked by vampires who'd viewed her with suspicion months ago. You saved my daughter, Isabeau's mother said, gripping Diana's hands with desperate gratitude. How can we ever repay you? By trusting me to keep trying, Diana said. We have so much more work to do. Work that consumed the next 6 months. Diana and Morella collaborated on designing the Clean Blood program, finding volunteers, establishing protocols. It was slow, meticulous, unglamorous work, but it was working. Korian threw himself into expansion, reaching out to other struggling principalities, offering to share what they'd learned. Noctis Vale began to shift from dying remnant to innovation center, a place where vampires could come to find solutions rather than just slow decline. And through it all, Diana and Korian grew closer. Their relationship deepened from passionate new love to something more solid, more lasting. They fought sometimes sharp arguments about strategy or risk, or how much Diana was taking on. But they always reconciled, always came back to each other. You're exhausted, Korian said one night, finding Diana asleep at her desk for the 3rd time that week. He scooped her up easily, carrying her to bed. There's too much to do, she mumbled against his chest. There will always be too much to do. You're mortal, darling. You need sleep. Says the creature who hasn't slept in 800 years. Which is why I know how precious it is. Sleep, Diana. Everything else can wait. She wanted to argue, but his cool presence was so comfortable, the bed so soft. She drifted off with his hand stroking through her hair, his voice humming something old and wordless. Winter arrived, and with it came a summons Diana had been dreading. The council wanted to formalize her position, which meant an official investiture ceremony, which meant making permanent what had been provisional her role as co-ruler of Noctis Vale. You can say no, Korian said when he told her. If it's too much, if you want to step back. I don't want to step back. Diana looked at the formal invitation, written in beautiful calligraphy on parchment. I keep thinking about my family, about how they cut me off because I chose you. And now I'm about to become a queen in a kingdom they don't even know exists. Does it bother you that they'll never know? No. Yes. Maybe. She set the invitation down. I don't need their validation. But part of me wishes they could see that I didn't need their money or their name to build something important. They'll see eventually. Noctis Vale won't stay hidden forever. Korian settled beside her. And when we do emerge, when the masquerade finally drops and vampires take their place in the open world again, you'll be a queen who helped make it possible. Let them reckon with that. Diana smiled despite herself. You think we'll go public someday? I think you'll make it inevitable. You're already blurring the lines with your non-profit, your volunteers, your cross-species collaboration. Another few decades and the secret will be impossible to keep. He took her hand. The question is whether you want to be there when it happens. The turning. They were dancing around it again. I've been thinking about it, Diana admitted, about what it would mean to become like you. And I'm afraid I'll lose something essential, that I'll stop being me. You won't. Korian said it with absolute certainty. I've seen hundreds of turnings, Diana. The person you are, your kindness, your determination, your brilliance, that's not in your mortality. That's you. It'll survive the change. But I'll never feel sunlight again, never have children, never die, he finished softly. Never leave me, never run out of time to finish all the work you've started. His thumb traced over her knuckles. I won't pretend there aren't losses, but there are gains too, and I'll be beside you through all of it. Can I decide after the investiture? Once I've actually ruled for a while, seen what this life really entails? You can decide never, and I'll still love you. He kissed her forehead. This is not a condition of my love, Diana. It's an offer, nothing more. The investiture ceremony was scheduled for the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. Traditional, Severin had explained, for vampire coronations. The darkness felt appropriate. Diana spent the week before in a state of controlled panic. There were rituals to learn, vows to memorize, formal robes to be fitted. She'd face the assembled principality and swear oaths in languages she'd had to learn phonetically. It felt simultaneously too important and slightly absurd. I'm going to mess this up, she told Alessia during a final fitting. You won't. Alessia adjusted the silver circlet that would mark Diana's rank. You've already done the hard part. You've earned their respect and proven your worth. This is just making it official. What if they change their minds? What if someone objects? Then Korian will probably threaten to kill them, and we'll all move on with our evening. Alessia smiled. Relax, Diana. You've got this. The night of the solstice arrived cold and clear. Diana dressed in the formal robes, deep crimson velvet lined with silver, beautiful and heavy. The circlet settled on her dark hair, marking her as something new. Not human, not vampire, but something in between. A bridge between worlds. Korian met her outside the great hall, and his breath caught when he saw her. You're stunning, he said. I'm terrified. That too. He offered his arm. Ready to become a queen? Do I have a choice? Always. Diana took his arm. Then let's do this. They entered the great hall together, and Diana's breath caught. The space had been transformed. Thousands of candles burned in every available surface, casting warm, golden light. Flowers night, blooming jasmine and moonflowers filled the air with sweetness, and vampires. What looked like every resident of Noctis Vale had gathered, all dressed in formal finery, all watching as she walked down the center aisle on Korian's arm. The throne had been altered. Now there were two, side by side, equal in height and grandeur. Korian's original black marble and silver, and beside it one of white marble and gold, clearly made for Diana. Severin waited at the dais, looking every one of his 3,000 years. The council stood arranged around him, formal and solemn. "Who comes before the Principality of Noctis Vale?" Severin's voice carried through the hall. "Diana Marie Oakley," Korian answered. "Formerly of the mortal world, now of both worlds, chosen consort of King Korian Whitmore and claimant to the throne of co-rule. And what has she done to earn such elevation?" This was the ritual part. Diana had memorized her response. "I have secured blood supply to the principality through legal means. I have established financial stability through non-profit organization. I have begun work on solving the fertility crisis. I have served the people of Noctis Vale with my labor, my expertise, and my loyalty. And are you willing to continue this service for the duration of your life, however long or short that may be?" Diana's throat tightened. Here was the moment, the commitment. "I am willing." "Then speak the oath." Diana had practiced the words 100 times. Now she spoke them clearly in the ancient language Severin had taught her. "I swear by blood and stone, by darkness and starlight, to serve Noctis Vale and its people. I swear to rule with justice and mercy, to protect the vulnerable and challenge the strong, to build rather than destroy. I swear partnership with King Korian and loyalty to the principality, from this night until the night of my death, or turning. Let my words be binding." Magic shivered through the air. Diana felt it settle into her bones, a weight and a purpose all at once. The oath was real, mystically enforced, tying her fate to Noctis Vale. "Then rise, Diana Oakley," Severin said, "and take your place as Queen of Noctis Vale." Korian guided her to the white throne. Diana sat, her heart pounding, and looked out at the assembled vampires. They were all kneeling. 800 immortal creatures kneeling for her. "My people," she said, and was amazed her voice didn't shake. "Thank you for this trust. I promise you I will spend every day trying to deserve it." Korian sat beside her, and his hand found hers between the thrones. His smile was pure joy. The ceremony dissolved into celebration. Music played a mix of classical pieces and modern songs that shouldn't have worked together but somehow did. Vampires approached to offer congratulations, some warmly, some formally, but all with respect. "Your family doesn't know what they've lost," Alessia said, embracing Diana carefully. "Their loss, our gain." Morella appeared, grinning widely. "Look at you, all official and queenly. It suits you." "Thank you for coming," Diana said. "Wouldn't miss it. I brought a gift." Morella handed over a small vial filled with dark liquid. "Modified blood therapy. Should help with the transition if you ever decide to turn. Makes it easier, less painful." Diana stared at the vial. "I haven't decided." "I know. Keep it anyway. Options are good." Morella winked and disappeared into the crowd. The celebration lasted until dawn. Diana danced with Korian, with council members, with vampires she'd come to know over the past months. She laughed and talked and felt the weight of her new crown and the lightness of genuine belonging all at once. As the party wound down, Korian pulled her aside. "There's one more thing." He led her to a balcony overlooking the principality. From this height, Diana could see the entire realm spread out below the residential quarters lit by soft light. The markets empty now, but usually bustling, the gardens with their impossible flowers. A kingdom, her kingdom. "I have a gift," Korian said, producing a small box. "I was going to wait, but tonight seems appropriate." Diana opened it and found a ring. Not an engagement ring, they'd talked about marriage and decided vampire customs were different. The oaths they'd just sworn more binding than any legal document. This was something else. A band of silver and gold intertwined, set with a single dark gem that seemed to hold starlight. It was my mother's, Korian said quietly. She ruled beside my father for 600 years. When she died, she made me promise to give it to someone worthy. He took the ring, sliding it onto Diana's finger. You're worthy, Diana, of this ring, this throne, this kingdom. Never doubt that. Diana looked at the ring, then at Korian, then out at the principality. I signed away a fortune for you, she said softly. And you gave me a kingdom. I gave you a chance to build one, he corrected. You did the rest yourself. We did it together. Together, he agreed. They stood there as the last vampires headed home, as the candles burned low, as a new day approached that Diana would face as a queen. She thought about her family, probably sleeping in their expensive beds, never knowing that the daughter they'd discarded had found something infinitely more valuable than money. She thought about the work still ahead, the fertility program to expand, the other principalities to help, the inevitable revelation when vampires finally stepped into the modern world openly. Decades of work. Centuries, if she chose immortality. I think I want it, she said suddenly. The turning. Not now, but someday, maybe in a few years, once I've established the programs properly, once I know I can handle the responsibility. Korian went very still. You're sure? I'm sure I want the choice. I want the time to do this right, to help your people, our people, to see the work through. She turned to face him. And I want forever with you. If that makes me selfish, I don't care. He kissed her then, deep and desperate, like she'd given him something infinitely precious. When they broke apart, they were both smiling through tears. A few years, Korian said. We can work with that. A few years, Diana agreed. They returned to the celebration, to the kingdom they would rule together, to the future they would build side by side. Diana's family had cut her from their inheritance for loving a vampire. They'd meant it as punishment, as loss. They had no idea they'd given her freedom. Freedom to choose a better kingdom, a better future, a better love than anything they'd ever offered. Let them keep their money and their society and their bitter disappointment. Diana Oakley had everything she needed right here. The years that followed were full and challenging and better than Diana had imagined. The fertility program began showing results. Vampires consuming clean blood reported improved health, increased vitality, and eventually pregnancies. The first baby born under the new program arrived 3 years into Diana's reign, and the celebration lasted a week. Noctis Vale's population stabilized, then began to grow. Other principalities adopted their innovations. Korian's reputation shifted from struggling king to visionary leader, and Diana's work earned her respect throughout the vampire world. Her nonprofit expanded, legitimately helping humans while serving its secondary purpose. Diana found herself actually enjoying the double life, the careful balance between worlds. She hired more staff, published more research, and quietly smiled when medical journals praised Diana Oakley's breakthrough work on rare blood disorders. Her family tried to contact her once. A letter from her mother 5 years after the disinheritance, suggesting Diana might want to reconnect now that she'd made something of herself with that little charity. Diana read it once, showed it to Korian, and they laughed until they cried. She wrote back a single line, "I have everything I need. I hope someday you find the same." She never heard from them again. On the 7th anniversary of her investiture, Diana woke to find Korian watching her sleep, as he often did. "I'm ready," she said. He didn't ask what she meant. He simply nodded and held her close. "Tonight, then, if you're certain." "I'm certain." They spent the day together, doing mundane things. Walking through the principality markets, visiting with friends, reviewing progress reports on various projects. Diana wanted to remember being human for these final hours, wanted to appreciate the warmth of her skin, the beat of her heart, the simple mortality she was about to trade away. That evening, the council assembled in the Great Hall, along with close friends and key members of court. The turning was always done publicly, witnessed, made official. Morella was there, smiling proudly. "Ready to join the Pale People?" she asked. "Ready as I'll ever be," Diana said. Korian led her to the center of the hall. They'd talked through what would happen, but now that it was here, Diana felt her nerves return. "I love you," Korian said softly, for her ears only. "Through all the centuries ahead, remember that. I love you too." The first exchange was gentle. Korian's wrist pressed to her lips, and Diana drank vampire blood for the first time. It tasted like metal and starlight and something ancient beyond words. Power flooded through her, dizzying and intoxicating. When she pulled back, the world looked sharper, colors more vivid, sounds clearer. "Tomorrow night," Korian said, then the third night. The second exchange was harder. Diana's body was changing already, preparing for the transformation. The blood burned going down, and she gasped against the pain. Korian held her through it, murmuring reassurances. "One more night," he promised. The third night arrived too quickly. Diana dressed in simple white, traditional for turnings. The council assembled again, and this time there was a solemnity to the gathering. Everyone understood what was about to happen. "Last chance to change your mind," Korian said, but his smile was gentle. "Not changing it." The third exchange was brutal. Diana drank deeply, feeling Korian's blood flooding her system, overwhelming her humanity. Her heart stuttered. Her lungs struggled. She felt herself dying and couldn't stop it, couldn't fight it. And then Korian's wrist left her lips and he lowered her to the floor, cradling her as her body shut down. "Sleep now," he whispered. "When you wake, it'll be to eternity." Diana's last human thought was that his voice was the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard. She woke to darkness. Complete, absolute darkness that somehow didn't frighten her. She sat up and realized she was in Korian's chambers, laid out on the bed like she was sleeping. But she wasn't sleeping, and she wasn't breathing either. Diana pressed a hand to her chest. No heartbeat. Cool skin, like marble. "Welcome back," Korian said from the doorway. He looked relieved, exhausted, and utterly joyful. "How do you feel?" Diana took inventory. Everything was sharper colors brighter, sounds clearer, scents overwhelming. She could hear conversations happening floors away, could smell blood and stone and the particular scent that was uniquely Korian. "Different," she said. "Good different. Is it always this intense? You'll learn to modulate it. For now, just breathe well, not literally." He crossed to her, helping her stand. "There's a mirror if you want to see." Diana approached the mirror hesitantly. The woman looking back was familiar but changed. White hair now instead of dark, pale skin instead of tan. But her eyes were the same brown, her features unchanged. "I'm still me," she whispered. "Told you." Korian appeared behind her reflection, and she saw them together, two vampires, pale and immortal, ready to face centuries side by side. "Still you, just more so." Diana turned to face him properly. "What now?" "Now we teach you to hunt, to fight, to use your new abilities. Now we continue the work we started together. Now we have forever to build the kingdom we've dreamed of." His hand cupped her cheek. "Now we live, Diana, for as long as the world turns." She kissed him, vampire to vampire, cool lips meeting cool lips, and felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was where she belonged. Not in a family that had discarded her, not in a world that had never quite fit. Here. In the darkness beneath the city, ruling a kingdom of outcasts and dreamers, alongside the vampire who'd seen her worth when no one else had. The council threw another celebration, this one for Queen Diana's successful turning. The principality rejoiced, and Diana spent the night learning her new nature, accepting congratulations, and reveling in the sheer impossible joy of it all. Near dawn, she and Korian slipped away to their favorite balcony. The sky was lightening. They'd have to retreat indoors soon, a new limitation Diana was still getting used to. "Any regrets?" Korian asked. Diana thought about her human life, the family that had cut her off, the fortune she'd signed away without hesitation, the mortality she'd just traded for immortality. "None," she said honestly. You gave me a kingdom, Korian. You gave me purpose and partnership and a love I didn't know existed. How could I regret any of that? Your family never understood what they lost when they pushed you away. Their loss, Diana said, echoing Alessia's words from years ago. Besides, I found a better family, a better inheritance, a better everything. Korian pulled her close, and they watched the sun rise together, knowing they'd have to leave before its light became dangerous. But for these few precious moments, they stood there, vampire king and vampire queen, partners in every sense, rulers of a kingdom they'd saved together. Diana thought about the girl who'd signed away a fortune in a lawyer's office 7 years ago. She'd walked out with nothing but love and hope and stubbornness. Now she had everything. The years stretched ahead, infinite and full of possibility. Noctis Vale would thrive. Other principalities would follow their example. Eventually, Diana knew, vampires would emerge into the modern world openly, and she would be there to help bridge the gap between species. But that was future work. Tonight, this morning, she simply stood with Korian and watched the sky turn gold, feeling the cool press of his hand in hers, grateful for every choice that had led her here. Her family had cut her from the inheritance for him. The vampire king had given her a kingdom instead, and Diana Oakley, formerly human, currently immortal, eternally grateful, had accepted it with both hands and made it her own. "Come on," Korian said as the sun crept higher. "Let's go home." Diana smiled, following him into the cool darkness of their realm. Home, that's exactly what it was.